Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's NAC at Home program. Today is a fascinating program about drawings from the Amazon, thanks to our friends at Shin Gallery from New York's Lower East Side. My name is Charles Snyder, and I, along with my co-chair and friend Laura Daly, we are chairs of the Roundtable Committee here at the National Arts Club. The National Arts Club is a 501c3. Our mission is to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts and educate the American people in the fine arts. The National Arts Club offers more than 150 programs each year. They are open to the public. It includes exhibitions, theatrical, musical performances, lectures, readings, and this year, many different online programs each week, just like this one that you're about to experience. Learn more about the National Arts Club. Learn more about joining the club at nationalartsclub.org. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where today's program will also be shared to be viewed later. About today's program, I had the privilege of seeing this collection in January at Shin Gallery. They had not previewed it at the time quite yet, so I was very privileged and honored to be one of a few individuals to see this amazing collection. I was so grateful and thankful. I thanked them the best way I knew how, which was drinks at the parlor of the club shortly thereafter. So it is a real treat to catch up and to see my friend from the Shin Gallery to share this exciting collection with you. Now, questions and answers will be addressed at the end of the formal program. So please, during the program, do use the Q&A function as questions and comments arise. And now, without further ado, I am very excited and pleased to introduce our speaker, Stavrula Koulianidis.
Hello, Charles. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be talking about the Native Amazonian drawings today. So if we want to start with the presentation, does that work?
Wonderful.
Great. All right, let's see. So how does that look?
Excellent.
Great. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Stavrula Koulianidis, and today I'm going to be speaking about the Native Amazonian drawings. These are extremely rare pieces of work, and I just want to emphasize that to find these is very, very difficult, and we have found them. We've found a number of them, and we're going to be showing these at the gallery sometime next year. So please stay tuned and keep a lookout for the works. They are exceptional. So to start, I'm just going to talk a little bit, just a brief overview of the drawings. So these are drawings that were produced in the Amazon basin during the 1970s and 80s. And during this time, this is an area untouched by outside human civilization. Originally, anthropologists went to study the tribes for solely anthropological reasons, not artistic reasons. But as the tribes began to become more comfortable with these anthropologists, and the anthropologists with the tribes, both wanted to learn more about one another. And the anthropologists specifically wanted to understand the tribe's culture and myths in greater detail, because language was a barrier. So these are when the drawings come into play. First, it started out as an exercise, but it actually turned into this iconology. and this study of how tribes' ideas and actions were communicated on a flat surface. And so the drawings offer a really unique interpretation inside their society. And today I'm going to talk about themes that are seen in their work. And the artworks that were made are made with paper that was given to the tribes by the anthropologists. The anthropologists also gave them brushes and paint. And these are materials that were unknown to them prior. So this is new material that they're working with. And I do want to point out a lot of the information that I'm going to be talking about today is based on a book called Wahara. Wahara is a tribe that Bob Nugent and Dr. Vera Coelho actually created an exhibition around this tribe in the 90s. And so they made a book on it, and it's extremely helpful in understanding their intentions, the tribe's intentions when creating these works. And it goes into great detail. Now, the drawings that we have are not from the Wahara tribe, but the basic details of the book can really help in understanding all these different tribes that we're going to see in all their different drawings. And just a little backstory, these drawings have become more popular. The Cartier Foundation in Paris did an exhibition with these works in 2003, which is major. And so I think just in general with society and everything going on, indigenous tribes are becoming more important to our society, remembering these tribes, and just the environment in general is, and well, now thankfully will become more important, which is fantastic. And you know, it's such a crucial part of these tribes' lives. And so yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about them. And just the image that I have right here, this is made by the tribe Mihinaku, and it's called Birds. And all of these works are made in the 1970s, 1980s. And actually, birds were really sought after pets for the tribes. And so, you know, each drawing has its own meaning, and we'll dive deeper into it. And their use of symmetry and line is so appealing. And I'm sure you'll see certain similarities as we move forward with the presentation. Okay. Great. So just to give you an understanding, this is the Amazon basin. It's massive. It's almost the same landmass as the United States. But particularly, we're going to be focusing on the upper Xingu region. So you'll see the purple line here. That's the Xingu River. But we'll be focusing on the upper part of that. That's where most of the tribes are. And so in that area, there's many forests, lakes, grasslands, and rivers. And the area is actually quite notable for the Indians' differing linguistic backgrounds. And it's become almost like a melting pot of different cultures or from different tribes. And it's become a very homogeneous culture. And so, and actually the Upper Xingu region became one of the first areas to come under federal control of protection of its natural resources, which is amazing. So this area is very well protected, and it's heavily controlled by the Brazilian Air Force. They actually have an emergency airstrip right by the area. So it's very safe, which is great. And so this is actually an image of one of the tribes. This is the Waorani indigenous people. And just to give you, this is a sense of people today. And during the 19th and 20th century, there were about 36 different tribes in Brazil. The population numbered to 3 to 5 million. So it's a lot of people. And each tribe specializes in different trades and different skills, and specializations are highly regarded. So actually, a lot of the reasons why these anthropologists went there in the first place was, of course, to study the culture and the people, but Also, their skills. So, certain tribes were experts in pottery, others were experts in basket making, others, well, actually, most of the tribes, but some in particular, were experts in body painting. So, they had these artistic ways of being and expertise and things. So, that was the main reason. And of course, it went further on. Um, Unfortunately, today there's estimated to be less than 200,000 Indians that are surviving, and this is due to deforestation, diseases, and other factors. Um, but while there are still many distinctive cultures around the people of the Amazon, they all share a number of the same characteristics, which is quite important. You know, there are different tribes, right? Different types of people, different skill sets, but they have this distinct culture that they all share certain things in common. They have these things in common. And that's a passion for their land and a way of living that is harmonious with their surroundings and their resources. And they have a profound knowledge of and respect for the natural world. It's really part of their lives. And a belief in the spiritual world as well. You know, the presence of spirits is in all things, and that's called animism. There's also a veneration of their ancestors and respect for their elders as people of wisdom and, interpreters of oral and spiritual history. And we'll see that so much in the drawings. There is this, mythology and spirituality is a major part of the importance of the drawings, and we'll dissect that as well. So in this slide, this is a brief description of what was noted in the Eventbrite, and all the flyers you've been seeing about the show. I've just put it in there for you to read, but to dive a little bit deeper in that, this study began in the 1960s, and this is a generalization of anthropologists going to the Amazon to study these tribes. It started in the 1960s, very early on. And it's really fascinating because when the tribes first encountered white people, they consider us white people, white women, white men. It was almost like an alien coming to Earth. They had no idea who we were, what we were. We were this strange species. And actually, if you look up videos on YouTube, and I highly suggest you do this, look up indigenous tribes, encountering white people, and you'll see these tribes so scared and like pointing sticks at like these anthropologists, you know, and it takes a little bit of time and trust for them to understand, okay, these are humans. They're just different skin tone colors. So I feel like you can study a whole other section about that, but definitely look into that. It did take some time for the tribes to understand us and to get used to us. But eventually that became quite the norm. Anthropologists would come in once in a while and study these tribes, and the tribes actually enjoyed it because it was sharing their culture with other people. And eventually they understood that was sharing their culture with the greater world. So it really was a benefit on both parties. Um, so when examining the drawings, I have a drawing here of a snake, which we'll talk about. Again, there's going to be different themes that the tribes depict, and all of these themes preserve their traditional cultural values. And what's interesting about these drawings is that there's no Western influence. Western influence is virtually unknown to them. And so themes that we're going to talk about are geometric designs, anthropomorphic figures, animals, mythological beings, and landscapes. These are the main categories that we'll be seeing. And so the snake here, the snake illustrates a myth, and it is the story of the anaconda. The anaconda is the largest snake in South America. And for this particular drawing, the snake is covered with pots, and these pots are the circular black drawings on the snake. And the story goes, the pots were on the snake, right? This was actually a snake that was a human, but was cursed and turned into a snake. And so the snake goes through the tribes, and certain pots fall off the snake. And actually, these pots, when they fall off, it's actually an area of good luck, of good bringing. And so the tribes, when they see these pots, that's actually where they dig to collect their clay for pottery. And so, but they do this very carefully not to provoke the snake. So if the snake is around, they don't want to have the snake nearby. They do it very secretly, which is it's quite interesting because the snake is a spiritual being. It's not the best spiritual being. Most of the red drawings that we'll see, the red signifies something that's dangerous. And so, but they do respect these animals, even though they are dangerous. They are respected and part of nature, which is important to note. And actually, another interesting fact is that the tribes, they don't really eat meat. They eat fish, fruit, turtle eggs, and other sources of protein, but they really do worship animals. And so we'll actually see that in this slide. This is a cougar, made by the same tribe, 1970s, 1980s, and this is paint on paper. And so the color black actually suggests that they were masters of the water. And you'll see the blue line signifies water. And these animals are really just observations that the tribe sees on a daily basis. So they're really talking to these anthropologists in terms of the animals that they draw. These are our animals we see every day, and we're going to tell you that we see these animals every day based off these drawings. And these animals are not just animals, they're part of nature, they're spiritual beings to us, and we respect them. But you can see the color usage is quite free. There's little representational accuracy portrayed. So they're not going in putting all the fur details and all the different there's you don't even see the nose really. It's just the basic generalization of a jaguar. And this is quite interesting because for them, when you're thinking about tribes, they're not obsessed with detail. They don't need to be, especially if you think about body painting. Body painting is putting certain colors and geometric patterns on your face, and there is no need to be very specific. It's just not necessary, really. But what is interesting about the tribes is that they're adopting these new values in relation to their traditional art forms, right? So the new values are paper and paint. This is unheard of. They're always working in this two-dimensionality. And so when you're able to portray what you feel on this flat surface, that in itself is really crucial information in how you see the world. And this is what interested anthropologists even more so. Not necessarily that it was artwork, it was more of the idea behind why they were drawing this in a particular way. It was their perspective. And of course, this is all detached to art history. So, they don't have art history background or anything like that. It's almost this very primitive way of creating. It's the most primitive way of creating because um, there is no background or knowledge of them learning about outside culture. So it's just their way of being, which is, I think, really amazing. Because I feel like actually most artists strive to do that. They strive to just be when they're creating, not to think so much. And so when we're seeing this type of art, it's quite inspiring. This is a drawing of a jaguar, and you see it is red. So what does red signify? It signifies something that's a bit dangerous. Um, they call this a supernatural double. The red also actually suggests fire. So you don't want to get too close to these. They might hurt you. But again, we do see that the details are omitted. This one has circles on the body, which is a little bit different from the cougar, which was all black. This, they're trying to maybe show um, some pattern here. But it's interesting because, they use circles to create this. They don't use straight lines. And so you figure why they do that. And it almost looks like the pots that were on the snake, doesn't it? So, there's no 100% real reason why they did certain things, but we can speculate. And I will point out that there are certain artists that are possibly a little bit better than others. These are all individually done by one person in the tribe. And it's funny, like, studies say that when certain tribe members were painting, they would maybe make one painting, and then if the anthropologists wanted them to make another and they knew they weren't that good, or if another tribe member knew they weren't that good, they would just be like, no, it's okay, let's give it to the guy who's good at drawing. So it's funny, you'll notice that some are might be better than others. And I mean, your interpretation of better might differ, but it's interesting to note that certain tribe members thought others were more artistic. So here we have an imaginary being. This is, we're done with the animals now. Now we're going into this more spiritual aspect. This is called the Karane Matipu and symbols. So these are imaginary beings that reference to the human body, but they have masks on. And we'll see later there is a difference between this spiritual being and an actual human. They're depicted differently. And this one actually has unnaturally large ears. And these creatures or beings dwell in the forest, and they are able to harm humans by eating them, and not physically eating them, but swallowing their souls or causing sickness. And this is red. Red causes danger. But to rid this, the shaman, the chief of the tribe, smokes tobacco and eats certain fruit to ward off the spirits. So if someone gets sick, or if their soul is hurting, this is what will happen. And ceremonies will actually be held as well, where really the whole tribe is involved in helping better this individual. And here we have these interesting geometric shapes around this being. And these symbols are most likely symbols that will harm the being and help the tribe member. And this is just another really interesting drawing. It's the seated devil, paint on paper again. These are all paint on paper. And It's really just, these beings are very prominent in the tribe's culture. There are, devils out there, and they do depict it from time to time in the drawings. And again, these are a selected group of drawings that I've chosen. These are not all the drawings, there are many. So I just picked a few. This one's quite interesting. It's called Warrior and Other Elements. I like this one because it's not just one figure, it's multiple, and you see the sun is in the center of all nature, possibly, with the animals around it, the people around it. It's almost like an ecosystem. But with this one, the back of this drawing has feathers. And a few of these drawings do have feathers on the backs. And the feathers are taken from birds. As I said, birds are actually quite sought after animals for the tribes, and they are wonderful pets, but their feathers are also used as decorative elements for ornamentation. So they are highly regarded animals. They're very special, and um, this is a sign of good bringing for the tribes, and they are always put on the back of the drawings. Not all of them, just a few drawings have these. Very rare and very important to to note and to see. Here's another one. This is a dance happening, very joyful. And this one's interesting. This one, it's all in black, but the arrow lines, you'll see these arrows that are in the bodies of the people. They actually symbolize body paint and markings on the faces or bodies of both men and women. So you'll see there is no gender here. Everyone is the same, but it does suggest that is for men and women. But this is a very traditional and ritualistic ceremony that that could occur. It's very joyous. It's and again, we notice this symmetry, this pattern that is constantly being seen in a lot of their drawings. And I think symmetry does play a role again in body painting because our faces are symmetrical in a way, and when you're putting on body paint, you want it to also be symmetrical. They also do this with their pottery. A lot of these drawings that we see are shown in their pottery as well. So this is a man depicted very strong, very tall. He is naked, but he does have ornamental jewelry on. You see that with the bright red earrings there. So this is called man with earring. And you can see there's an obvious difference between this man and the other spiritual being we saw earlier. This looks more like a human, and obviously, it's very obvious to see this based on what is drawn here. But it is a beautiful drawing. I really do like this one. The colors are quite nice. And these, we see the size here, 18.6 by 12.6. These aren't massive drawings. These are, normal size piece of paper, maybe a little larger than normal size pieces of paper, but nothing massive, very intimate drawings. So this is clearly a woman. It's called Mother and Son. This one is just so beautiful to me. It's, women are often depicted as thicker, stronger in stature. And with this piece, it's transparent. You see inside the woman and you see that she's pregnant. You see the baby in there. It's very colorful, it's very beautiful. It's like Picasso-esque. And it's very colorful, it's celebratory to me, but it has this really avant-garde way of looking at a pregnant female figure, you know? This is really creative, in my opinion, this particular work. And, you know, childbirth is obviously something that is really highly regarded um, in the tribes, and passing on their traditions and their stories to their young. It's a very important part of their culture. So I think this is seen in a very positive light, and it's a very appealing image, I would say. So this drawing is probably the most complete looking drawing that we will see. This is done by the Wayani tribe. It's called Decorative Motives. This is almost very symbolic feeling. I'm not sure what the design, you know, we're not sure what the design is really supposed to say, but it is almost this ornamental, decorative drawing. But you have elements of animals around it, individuals around it. It's almost part of nature. Um, and then you have these geometrical designs, the circles, dots, lines, squares. This all depicts particular language for them. There's this sense of rhythm, symmetry, but there's also this firmness of the hand. You know, the tribes really know what they're doing. They know what they want to say. Um, and a lot of these lines, you know, were done by hand. And that's what I mean by firmness of the hand. Very rarely did they use rulers and such. Everything was done um, on their own time. And they were really careful to create these drawings. Before they would draw on them on the pieces of paper. These pieces of paper were very important, fragile almost, and they didn't want to waste it. It was very sacred. And so they would actually trace, maybe in the dirt, what they wanted to draw before they actually put it onto the piece of paper. So they did really take their time with this, and they really did care to express their thoughts and ideas with these white people who wanted to learn more about their culture and society. So this is a really beautiful, well completed drawing that we're seeing here. And I am curious to hear everyone's opinions on all these drawings. I hope we can go back and talk about each one more, because it's always great to hear different opinions. So this is actually the last drawing I have, and it is a landscape depicting natural elements. It is the eclipse of the sun. We all know this, and I think this one is quite relatable. And it's a very basic way of looking at, you know, the natural world, right? And this moment in time. And we all can see and interpret this in our own way. And I just love how they interpret it here. It's very confident, you know, a little messy, but so great. We understand what's happening just by two simple shapes, you know. But I think just in general, you know, the arrangement of motifs and the use of repetition to achieve symmetry, um, you know, in this flat dimension is really fantastic, because again, they were working in this two-dimensional surface prior. But drawing for these tribes was really something of enjoyment. It was sociable. I mean, you give someone a piece of paper and hey, it's fun, it's something exciting, and this was not something that was forced upon them. It was something that was enjoyable for everyone. And even, for face painting, it's something of a way to interact with other humans. You're really close to somebody, you're painting their face. It's a way to talk to somebody else, maybe talk about their day, how they're doing. This is a form of language. And so um it's just really wonderful to see, and how these individuals were able to adapt to these changes and make it completely their own. That's really hard to do. And so, our job now is to communicate their cultures with the rest of the world. And it's not just from an aesthetic point of view. This is a viewpoint on how we treat others, how we beautify objects, and how we can take better care of the environment around us. So that is all that I have to say about these drawings. And I'm just putting a little contact here. This will be shown at Shin Gallery again sometime next year. And this is our contact information. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to email, call, to learn more. Thank you. Oh, and Charles, I think you're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Stavrila, thank you very much. By the volume and context of the questions, you have delighted and excited everyone who is interested in. It looks like our attendees today are interested in the art, the history, the culture, the anthropology of this program. So thank you. As you can see, we have a number of questions in the Q&A. I had two questions come to me. I'd like to ask you the first one, and I'm sure you could host a 3-day symposium on this first question. But how, with the gallery, how would you classify or distinguish this artwork kind of in the canon of traditional art? Is it self-taught? Is it outsider art? How can you possibly apply any of our, the model we know in art to these unique examples?
That's a great question. And yeah, I think we can dive really far into that, right? At one hand, they are outsider artists in that they were self-taught. They didn't have any academic background, right? So you could technically classify them as outsider. But I feel as though they are really a category of their own. This is something that is so rare to find, and it's really not common. You could really classify this as their own category. And in terms of greater art history, I mean, this is happening in the 60s, 70s, 80s. There's a lot of art movements going on, whether that's New York abstract expressionism, Cobra. I don't think it really constitutes as that, or it doesn't constitute as that, but I think that they really are a category of their own. And I think you could classify them as outside artists just because they are self-taught. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, we could talk a lot about it. And
I mean, they are a special works of art for sure. And I guess that's part of the challenge as you represent these works. How do you present them and represent them? Um, Something, there's the symbolism and meaning of each drawing unto itself, but you could really go deep into some of the symbolism inside the symbolism. We had someone who commented that one of the pictures they saw a spade as if from a deck of cards, and then in that drawing there was also what looked like a fleur-de-lis. And yes, in this one, and then in that drawing that you, as you explained, was almost complete, I thought I was seeing a Greek key. So you can really, maybe you see what you want to see, or you interpret based on what you know. Um, but I'm sure there's still yet a lot of study and research that could be done just on again, the symbolism and meaning.
I think so. There is so much symbolism and meaning in these works. Especially, yeah, you see it here. And sometimes you can. Anthropologists have studied and understand. The sun is a natural element that's in the corner here. That's probably a sun, and that's something that's important to the whole environment. But you do have these really decorative elements that are smaller, kind of in the background, but they're equally as important. And so, yeah, I think a lot of interpretations can be seen from it, from all different types of viewpoints. And I think that's what's so great about this work is it is quite relatable, um, to other people. You don't have to really, you can look at it and just feel so comfortable with it, because there isn't this academia or anything that you really need to know beforehand. It's just being very free. So yeah, I think symbolism is a huge part of their culture and their traditions, and people can interpret it different ways.
Tell us a little bit, Stavrila, about how the works of art became titled. Was that just agreed upon by the anthropologists, or was it agreed upon later, or was it, as far as the titling each work? What was the derivation of the title of each work?
So the titles of each works, they were consulted with the tribes and the anthropologists together. But I do think, at the end of the day, the anthropologists really took the initiative to title these works, um, just based off their meaning. Some are more obvious, the seated devil, it looks like he's sitting, possibly. And they're very basic titles. But I think it was discussed between the tribes and the anthropologists. The anthropologists just made it maybe that extra step to title them more specifically.
Yes, that makes sense. Makes sense of now. This next question has quite a bit to do about one of the tribes. The gender roles, separation of labor. Could you share a little bit more about the way the tribes, what was their day to day or their way of life? How egalitarian was it, for instance? Someone was curious about.
Yeah, sure. So if we go back here, maybe, but I think it's things that you might expect. The men were more of the gatherers. They would go out, get the food, um, train in maybe killing things, animals, let's say, um, where the women did more of the basket weaving or the pottery or took care of the children. Um, it is definitely more of these roles that are, I guess, that we would maybe think of. But saying that, the women also had really strong responsibilities as being a mother, and I think you see that in, um, this drawing, it's something very powerful, and for a woman to be pregnant and to have children is um, a sign of good faith and good fortune for the family. Um, so yeah, I think the day to day is really taking care of the children, getting food to eat, having these ceremonies that happen occasionally, and really being a community with each other and with their environments around them.
Which I suppose you could say you see depicted here. It with
Yeah.
the encounters with a jaguar or panther, for instance, is part of the day to day life of um, for these tribes. Could you go to the slide of the pair of sons? We had a
Yeah.
question, and then actually there's a conversation going on in chat about why do you believe that the sun is red in this depiction? Or could you tell us a little bit more about the meaning and symbolism in this work?
So this is the eclipse of the sun,
The
which is
eclipse.
why it's, yes, so this is why it's red. This only happens, only once in a few years, I think. But this is something that does happen once in a while, and so this is a really specific moment when um, the sun really looks red, orange or red type colors. So yeah, this is really just a direct depiction of the eclipse of the sun.
Okay, okay, and I think it's universal, or it
Yeah,
had been universal, that the eclipse was, anything from a sign from the gods to the end of the world. So I could see
yes,
where
that
this
too.
would that an eclipse would not be a welcomed event.
Yeah, especially because it's red. Also, it could also mean that as well, the end of the world.
Um, what were some of the what did the tribes use in their communications? I mean, this is such a unique story that they were presented with, paints and brushes and these materials. But what were their natural tools for communication as far as art or writing or anything like that?
So most tribes are illiterate. They can't read or write. At least back in the 60s and 70s and 80s type. Um, some tribes spoke Portuguese, which is interesting, but not everyone, just certain people. And in terms of visual language, again, I think their body markings is really important. They do this all the time. And I think yeah, their specializations, so the pottery, the basket weaving, all of these artistic practices were really essential in defining who they were. But I think within the tribes they have their own language, obviously. But when it was coming to the anthropologists, that's why the drawings are so important. Is that they really, with only a few tools, you can share a common visual language where a particular point is coming across and it can be understood on both ends, which is that's why art is so wonderful.
And I could just think, I'm thinking to myself, that anthropologist must have been shocked and delighted when he or she greeted that tribe member to be replied to in Portuguese.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Um, Now, how about the colors? Were the were the anthropologists? I mean, were they limited in the reds, blacks, blues, or were other colors available, or is it just, what what was available during these encounters?
So yeah, the images I am sharing is mostly the black, blue, red colors, but no, there are other colors available. They could make, I mean, I don't really see a lot of pinks or purples so much, I guess, but the main primary colors were definitely more appealing, I would say. Why? I'm not really sure. Maybe because it's colors we see in every day. So that's why. But yeah, they had all different types of colors available to them, but they did choose most of the time specific colors.
I'm very thankful for a question from one of our guests who said, "So when will these be available for display at the National Arts Club?" And so that's wishful and hopeful thinking. Um,
I love it.
but we did have some questions. People were just asking, are there going to be prints available of any of these? Share a little bit about, what are the hours right now at Shin Gallery? What are you, share a little bit more. I mean, I know you said it's next year, but what are your plans with these works of art?
Sure. So I don't think we're going to make prints of these. These are unique works, and we're going to keep them as unique works. These works are, some of them are framed, some of them are not. There's still there's a few of them. So, but they will all be framed for the exhibition. Um, in terms of interest for those interested, because they are so rare and so selective, we are, and I am being transparent, we are being selective with who is acquiring these works because they are, again, so important. But with that being said, they are available. And so for anyone who is interested, you can email info@shin-gallery.com and we can kind of go from there really. But yeah, the gallery hours, I mean, if you're interested in seeing them in person, we are open Wednesday through Sunday from 10:30 to 6:30. So yeah, it really just email in advance and we can talk further.
Someone was asking Stevrila about the status and of the tribes today. I mean, of course, that is a very newsworthy item, and newsworthy topic. But do you know more about the status of the tribes right, this year
Yeah.
or since this time?
Yeah, so the tribes have obviously evolved a lot since the 70s. They are more aware of the outside world. You even see some of them taking selfies on iPhones and things like that. It's not like it was, decades ago. But they're still around. I mean, they're still there. There's a lot less of them. As I said earlier, there was maybe 3 to 5 million in the 60s, and now there's less than 200,000. So the numbers have declined an exponential amount. And again, a lot of that has to do with deforestation. We have bigger companies now, trees are being cut. The environment is not a first priority in most situations, unfortunately. So, their environments are being destroyed. They're in contact with new people, which brings new diseases. So it's not really the most pleasant today. I mean, they're still active. They're still doing everything that they're doing. They're carrying on their traditions, their myths, and there are a lot of activists out there who are really trying to keep these tribes intact and to live for years to come. So but it is an issue. It's definitely an issue.
Well, one thing that makes this body of work so important is that it is a snapshot of, whether it was the 70s or 80s. I mean, it's a snapshot of the world in which they were living and experiencing. And so of course, the dangers and the risks and the problems 40 years later would be much different. But I think that's something that makes this collection so special, because it is just truly a snapshot of a time in a very rare, of a very rare situation.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think, these, yeah, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Stavrila.
Yeah, but I think just, again, these drawings are really important because it just gives a whole other outlook on creating art, and seeing how different people see things, in everyday life. It's great.
Well, it was almost so pleasant and sweet, really, in one of the works of art to see what I think is a ladybug depicted, and then to see a turtle depicted. Just
oh yeah. This one maybe, or
the one with this one. I mean, that little ladybug and that turtle, universally, those are just good, nice creatures that you want around you. You welcome a ladybug, you welcome a turtle. I'm glad we've just about reached the hour. I'm glad you have this one up. I think this one is so special for not just the symbolism, but as you said, it is a complete work of art. I mean, the border is amazing.
Yeah, this one is really one that is fully finished. I mean, the other ones are completely finished as well, but this one, it really takes up the whole paper, and it's really striking.
Stavrila, we have about a minute left. If you would like to close, take half that minute, and then I'll take the second half of the minute as we wrap up.
Great. No, I just want to say thank you, Charles, for having me today. It's been such a wonderful discussion, and I hope people learned a little bit more about the tribes and the importance of these really intricate and historical drawings.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this special collection with all of us. On behalf of all of our guests, as on behalf of the National Arts Club, we are indebted to you and Shin Gallery for this special presentation. And thank you all. Thank you to all of our guests for the conversation, for spending this hour with us. Please continue to enjoy and register for other programs at nationalartsclub.org. And with that, our time is up, and we thank you for yours.